Hello and welcome to the fifth episode of The Shakedown. Today we have a fun little show. It's Bryan and I's favorite time of the year, or one of them, Halloween time. And so today we're going to celebrate that. But first, he's Bryan and I'm Adam. And here comes The Shakedown. And again, welcome, Bryan. It's time yet again for another episode.
It is, man. I'm excited. We got a Halloween edition of the Shakedown. It's been a little while since we've done the Shakedown. I think the last one was early September. So here we are right before Halloween. Like Adam said, one of our favorite times of the year. And we have a little trick or treat for you tonight for you. And before that, something I've always done to Adam and Corey, I'm going to do it to 10 count right here. It's something that they said in Goosebumps, and that is 10 count, beware, you're in for a scare.
That's the show, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, we'll be back next time.
I got to be honest with you, Bryan. I don't remember you doing that.
I did it. I think I did it like a month ago, maybe. I know I do it for Halloween.
Okay.
Saying, Adam Davis, beware, you're in for a scare.
Okay, maybe that kind of rings a few bells. But yeah, it's our favorite time of the year. We usually typically try to go to some haunted attractions, some haunted houses, and kind of have fun with that. We used to travel all over the state to do that kind of stuff. We didn't get to do that this year, but so we thought we'd bring it to 10 count. And Bryan, why don't you kind of tell us about what we're talking about today?
Yeah, so like I said, it's Halloween season, so we are going to be tonight in this edition talking about our scariest wrestlers and kind of mystique and persona, the wrestlers of all time. So feel free, if you are watching or even if you go back and watch, please leave comment. Who are your scariest wrestlers of all time and why? So we're going to do a top five, both of us. And if we get to it, depending on time tonight, try not to keep it as long as we have been the last few shows. We might also talk about the scariest match types as well, our top 3 or 4 or 5, depending on how things go. So that's what we are going to do tonight, and we are excited about that here right before Halloween.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like, obviously this whole list that we're about to do is very subjective to our individual taste and preferences and stuff. But I don't know. I just think there's something cool about a wrestler that's able to take you outside of kind of the believability of everything and kind of makes you suspend your disbelief. I believe The Fiend is a good example of that right now today, of someone who can kind of make you accept things that you probably normally wouldn't accept, especially in the wrestling world, as crazy as wrestling can get. But so I don't know how far you dug into your past here, especially with you being more of a WCW guy. I don't know if your people are coming from WCW, so it's going to be interesting to see how this list starts out. So should we go ahead and start off with number 5?
Yeah, and also, I don't know about you, I have some honorable mentions as well. So if you have anybody else that was right there from getting in the top 5, we can mention that at the end. We're going to show pictures of each 5, but the honorable mentions, we can just say that. And before we get into that, so you can't quite see Adam's shirt there. He's hiding it a little bit. Miami Heat, as you know, Adam Davis is not a Miami Heat fan. He maybe likes them, but he is a big Boston Celtics fan. I am a big Miami Heat fan. There's my shirt, top to bottom. So just to give you just a little bit of background about that before we kind of get into the show, Miami and Boston met in the Eastern Conference Finals back, a month or so ago, which I believe Miami won, if I remember correctly.
I'll look it up while you talk. I'll look it up and see who won.
Yeah. Look that up.
But seriously, it feels like it was 4 months ago.
I know, yeah, the way things, it does seem like it has been a while. But anyway, we kind of were joking around, and Adam was talking about wearing a Miami shirt, and I was talking about wearing a Boston shirt. And so we came up with with kind of a bet that every time Miami and Boston plays, whoever wins, like if Boston wins, I wear the Boston shirt the next day, the whole day. And if Miami wins, Davis will wear the Miami shirt the whole day. So we didn't really get a chance to do that this time because we got our shirts right after they met. Probably a good thing for Davis, but yeah, we got it just then. But we're going to be doing that from now on. And we thought, in light of Halloween, too, we would I would wear the Boston shirt, and Adam would wear the Miami shirt. So that is where that's going from. People's like, man, what is this, Bryan? Like, Bryan, Adam lost it? No, we haven't lost it. We haven't lost it. That is where that comes from. So I wanted to clue everybody in on that. So yeah, let's get started, Davis, with the top 5. I will let you kick us off.
Okay. All right. Well, so here we go. So number 5, I went with probably right around the time I started watching wrestling. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen a little bit. And so number 5 for me was Gangrel. There was nothing like the teeth and the blood, and which obviously wasn't blood, but still, like, just that vampire vibe. Like, they've tried it since, and even with Edge and Christian, I think rounded it out. Like, I don't know what exactly was about it. He's number 5 for me because, like, it wasn't like so scary and creepy that I had trouble sleeping or anything like that. But like, whenever they took the screen, particularly Gangrel, like, you just kind of felt like he lived the life of not necessarily a vampire, but this character. And so for that reason, I kind of felt like, and again, throughout this whole list that I chose, it's not necessarily maybe the creepiest or the scariest, but it's stuff that I felt impacted and kind of, they always say wrestling, it's kind of like the character, that person that is the character at 11 or 12, because, like, yeah, it's just them with, turbo and up to 12 or 15 or whatever, kind of on steroids, if you will, no pun intended. Too soon to talk about steroids in wrestling, Bryan? Anyways, so I just felt like this was one of those extensions of him in certain ways, and I just felt like, as a kid, this kind of had an impact on me. This was one of my first memories of wrestling, aside from Stone Cold and Vince and Shane. This was one of the first memories I had of wrestling and kind of being legitimately creeped out a little bit.
Speaking of Gangrel, I was looking up, the scariest wrestlers, kind of to get an idea of who I was going to pick. Didn't he? I believe he had a blood match on Raw one time where you had to, like, pour blood. Obviously, probably not real, but pour blood over each other. And I think he ended up, the lights went out. So I saw it like literally 15, 20 minutes ago, and I was looking up. Lights went out and they poured blood over him. So I thought that was kind of an interesting, type of match. So we may get into match types later, but I wanted to point that out.
And as an aside, if for those of you who like podcasts, if you haven't listened to it, he was on the Edge and Christian podcast. It was a great interview where they kind of talk about their days together and kind of like, and he talks about his life and how he got where he was, and then kind of, how he progressed throughout the years, he kind of changed and stuff. So that's another fascinating listen, if that's something people are interested in. But Bryan, let's hear it, buddy.
All right, number 5. Let's kick it off. It's somebody that you know them, I believe, and but I don't know how much you watched them. And I watched him quite a bit. And he actually is in WWE now. He was not an original WWE guy. So let me share, and I will show who my number 5 is.
Oh, the suspense is killing me. Oh, who will it be?
Who's it gonna be?
Is it gonna be? Is it gonna be?
That is the Monster Abyss.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, the Monster Abyss. Yeah, he is number 5 for me because I remember he was always kind of creepy, and he had, of course, I can't think of it now, but it's kind of like Paul Bearer was to the Undertaker, James Mitchell. So he was kind of creepy, sidekick or the manager of Abyss, and he was really creepy in his early years in TNA. Not so much when he was Joseph Park, but and then obviously match types. He had the Monsters Ball, which those are always. If you get a chance to go back and watch any of those matches, I definitely recommend them because there's a lot of thumbtacks. I think he had one with Nick Foley, but a lot of thumbtacks, a lot of blood, a lot of crazy. Then his barbed wire that he called Janice. He is used quite a bit, so that is his kind of big match, the Monsters Ball. But yeah, he's just kind of got this suspense and this mystique about him that's very. He's similar to the Undertaker in certain ways, but very different in others. But I always thought that he was just kind of creepy and always just powerful and fun to watch. So that is my number 5, the Monster Abyss, aka Joseph Park.
And always from obviously again an outsider's perspective, I always felt like Abyss kind of had also a Mankind vibe to him.
Yep.
And so that's kind of like, to me, like, again, I watched very little of his stuff. I was familiar with Monster Ball or whatever, but yeah. So I kind of see like kind of again taking elements of people and putting them together. So I believe the format we're going with is, Bryan, you're also going to do your number 4 next, since you're already talking and chatting, and then we'll switch off.
I can do that. I stopped sharing, but I can.
Wow, that's embarrassing. Also, while you were sharing, I went to the full screen of you, and we saw your cat. Is that Eddie laying on the bed?
Oh no, that's Nash. That's
Nash. Okay, that's Nash.
Yeah. He's spooked, so he's sleeping it off. So.
Yeah, I get.
Let's go to my number 4. This wasn't planned, so thanks, Davis.
Oh, it should have been. We talked about this before we went live. Oh my gosh.
You know I don't listen too well. So.
That's true. You don't listen.
So number 4 is somebody we know very, very well. And here we go.
Oh, okay.
And, Bray Wyatt. And honestly, I was going to put him a little higher. The only reason I didn't is because, we haven't seen a ton of him, maybe the last close to a year. And I'm really interested with the thing with Alexa Bliss. I guess she's Sister Abigail. I don't really honestly know, but that whole thing is really intriguing. And I don't know if anybody had a chance to watch the Firefly Funhouse on Monday night. I don't know if you can tell me if you did it in a minute, Davis, but they killed the little rambling rabbit, and that was a little creepy. That was a little creepy, and the way they have, because he's 2 personas. He's Bray Wyatt and he's the Fiend. So he's very he's one of the most multi kind of faceted, if that's the right word, character that I've seen. Because I mean he's creepy. He's got this kind of almost like not a clown, but almost kind of like that funny, creepy vibe as well when he's regular Bray Wyatt. So and sometimes it's funny, like he gives you like a little bit of everything, and sometimes it's weird, and sometimes it's dumb. He gives you like the whole 9 yards, in my opinion. So yeah, the Fiend Bray Wyatt comes in at number 4 for me. But yeah, Adam, did you see the clip the other night on Raw with him and Alexa Bliss?
No, actually, I'm behind on all of that. I don't know. If you don't mind, fill me in just a little bit.
Yeah, so basically we did the Firefly Funhouse. She was been on it last week as well, and she kind of acts like this, like she's kind of like smiling and laughing, kind of like this sinister though, smiling like Bray Wyatt does. And basically, they end up smashing. So yeah, they smash Ramblin' Rabbit. Sorry, but if you haven't seen it, for people, but yeah, they end up basically killing Ramblin' Rabbit again. I think Bray killed him a while back, but yeah, because she gave him. She had like tea for him, and she was saying what's in it, a pinch of salt and a hint of this and a smidge of this. And then he, Ramblin' Rabbit, drank it, and it showed him like dead. And she was like, and arsenic. So that was after he had taken it. So he put arsenic in there as well. So it's just creepy, and it's really cool. I like it. I like what they're doing. But yeah, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's on my to-do list. So if you don't mind, we'll go to number 4. For me, and this is actually someone we've talked about already tonight, or we've mentioned, and let me just go ahead and bring him in. I actually have him here with us today, ladies and gentlemen, Mankind. And now when I say Mankind, I'm talking about the beginnings of Mankind, the kind of corner of the ring, rocking back and forth, kind of high pitched, calling for his mommy type thing. Like, to me, this character was so deep and, troubled, and like, obviously wrestling, especially like in the late 80s and 90s, like there was a lot of just superficial, the plumber, like just the barbers, and like, you and then you bring someone in, and again, the Fiend is probably kind of ties in, because I feel like the Fiend is what Mankind was trying to do. I feel like he was trying to go that route, and I don't think Mankind was able to do that for too long, because he kind of turned babyface and people started liking him for Mick Foley, who he was and what he's been through and kind of that kind of thing. So I don't think it kind of got to that full potential.
Yeah.
But I feel like, to me, looking back on something like that, like how deranged and kind of, uncomfortable he could make you, especially like in the ring and the things he was doing, pulling his own hair and stuff like that. Like that kind of, it's just that creepy factor to it.
I would say, like you're talking about Abyss, I think he did some of that too, I think he did something with his hands and kind of that creepy vibe. So I definitely see what you mean by the comparison between Mankind and Abyss.
Yeah, exactly. And I think all of these characters, Abyss, Mankind, and um, the Fiend, sorry, I just blanked out. The Fiend kind of all are very close related. They're like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, in that like they're all related, and they're all like, I think Mankind, kind of influenced both of these guys. And I think the Fiend is what Mankind could have been had things worked out a little bit differently then. And kind of like, to your point, like even Mankind was 3 different characters.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Bray and the Fiend is like at the same time flipping back and forth, kind of like Finn and the Demon, but obviously a little different. So, yeah, I feel it'd be remiss if Mankind wasn't on my list. Not only because he's like one of my favorites wrestlers just in general, but like especially the early Mankind before he got, applauded and was kind of a fan favorite. There was that sinister, deep, dark, mysterious, and kind of just darkness about him that, I don't think a lot of wrestlers can get to. Like, remember, I don't know, I think we've talked about him before, Bryan, but even like when they brought Nathan Jones in, this killer, and like he's in prison, and you just kind of expected more from him. And I feel like it happens all the time, but not everybody's able to get to that level.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, it is hard to get to that level, and I think definitely Mankind. I didn't see a whole lot of him, early on, but I want to go back and watch that. But now I was going to ask you, was he Mankind when he first came into WWE, or was he just Mick Foley? What was his first?
I think Mankind was his first kind of, because I think his first match was as Mankind against Bob Holly, Sparkplug Bob Holly. And then he started going against the Undertaker, and that kind of how that came about.
Okay.
But he came in as Mankind, because I think he was Cactus Jack in ECW and WCW, I think. And then, but when he came to WWF, he was Mankind.
Okay.
So again, I think it's on me now to go to number 3. So this one, I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anyone. And honestly, I'd be surprised if you and I don't have the same number 3, or he could be your number 2. He could be your number 2. I really feel confident that we may be close on this, but I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But my number 3, like, I don't think you can honestly have a list about the creepiest and scariest and spine-tingling wrestlers without putting the one and only. Oh, sorry, guys. My screen share quit. Okay, here we go. But the one and only Kane. Now, I want to preface this with this Kane, full mask Kane, before he took the mask off or did like the half mask where you can see his mouth. To me, this Kane was the Kane that you never heard, like the Kane you didn't hear speak, the Kane, like he just is so huge.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like he always creeped me out. Like it just, like I know you really love Kane, Brian. I know he's, you know, somebody that you've really enjoyed, especially his Shane McMahon match, that you will not stop talking about.
Two Shane
Uh,
McMahon matches. Two
yeah,
Shane matches.
2 Shane McMahon matches. But yeah, Kane is just one of those, like, again, I think lightning in a bottle. Like this
Yeah.
character easily could have went south and been garbage and, you know, laughed at. But he pulled it off.
Do
And
you think? Let me ask you this.
yeah,
Anybody else can fill in. Do you think that if it wasn't for the Undertaker, Kane would be what he was? Because I mean, you know, he came in and had that feud with the Undertaker, and they were the Brothers of Destruction. Would Kane be as dominant of a persona character without the Undertaker, or would you think there would be no Kane if there was?
I think you're right. I think Kane. I think it made it easier having the Undertaker there, because the Undertaker, as I said, I think that's even harder persona to get over than Kane, because the Undertaker is so simple and is so like easily could go downhill.
Yeah.
You can look at, you know, countless, and everybody knows the names of the countless wrestlers that they've given these names to, and like they're just occupations, like, you know, dentist and IRS, and like some of those like work, but most of them they don't. Like Isaac Yankem, I think, was Kane, if I remember correctly. Wasn't that Kane? He was like a dentist before he was Kane. Isaac
I think
Yankem.
you're right. Yeah.
I think I'm right. I might be wrong. So
think-
like, yeah. So it's like, I think you're right. I think without the Undertaker, I don't think Kane is quite as successful. Maybe he still could have been successful. It's hard to say, but I feel like Undertaker and that kind of the path he paved, I think, made it easier for something like Kane to not only someone to play off of, but to kind of pave that way for Kane to work, I think.
Yeah, that is yeah, it is interesting. You know, kind of how Kane Undertaker came about. So yeah, let's go to my number 3, and let's see if it plays into what we just talked about, or if it's completely different. So my number 3.
So excited. I'm so excited. Oh, I don't like this.
Yeah, that is. I kind of went back and forth on him being potentially number 2, and maybe even number 1. Yeah, the Undertaker, and we just and just talked about him, and I mean, there's not a whole lot you can really say, because I mean, you know, the character speaks for himself, but just the phenomenon, what he's been able to do for, you know, 30 years, what he did in the business, and I didn't see a lot of the, you know, from like 90 to really the 90s, not much of the Undertaker, but I mean, he's been creepy even when he was American Badass. I mean, he wasn't like creepy then, but he still had a good persona, and just, you know, I don't know, he was just a great wrestler, and always scary, and just that mystique and the mystery of him. And he didn't really talk a whole lot either, but when he did, it was, you know, he always talked real deep, and, you know, and all that. And it was always creepy, and it was always, I mean, he always came out and entertained really well, put on great matches. And I mean, I feel like he's got to be in everybody's top 5. So we'll see if he is in your top 5. But yeah.
You know, again, I feel like you're right. The Undertaker kind of has the whole package. Like the entrance alone. Like I know we joke about how long it is, or it can be, especially at WrestleMania when the ramp is a mile long.
Yeah, I think he's still finishing one right now.
Yeah. But like the music, when the gong hits, when the lights go down and the lightning strikes, like there's just so many iconic moments where lightning strikes. So I think Undertaker was buried alive in concrete. He's buried alive underground, and his hand pops up, like stuff like that. Like that stuff is cool, and that's what helps set a character apart and kind of makes it like something you haven't seen before. And I mean, honestly, maybe you and I are biased, but like growing up on the Undertaker, especially on SmackDown, like, you know,
Yeah.
it just wasn't a SmackDown without the Undertaker.
Yeah, you're
Um,
right. You're right.
and like, and the fog and the smoke, and like you said, like when he barely talked, like he barely talked, but it's still like when he did, it meant something. Which,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes people, you can say all you want to, and maybe you got the gift for gab, but if you don't say anything, no one really cares. You can say as much as you want, but if there's no meat to it, and
Right.
I mean, there were sometimes I'm not going to sugarcoat like Undertaker. There were sometimes it was cheesy and, you know, ridiculous, but I don't know. At the end of the day, like you're right, like spine tingling chills, especially like when he would come out, like you were there live in the arena. Like we were fortunate to be there for some WrestleManias where he came out, and
Yeah,
we were there for his first loss at WrestleMania,
I
and that was
know. Yeah,
shocking. Like
that was.
you could hear a pin drop in the what was it, the Thunderdome? No, what was it,
The Superdome.
the Superdome?
What
Uh,
the Hulk Hogan said it was a Silver Dome.
Silver Dome. That's what I was going for, the Silver Dome.
Yeah,
But no, it was, yeah, it was impactful.
yeah.
He was impactful. He is impactful.
Yes, yes, yes. So let's go on to my number two, and then get back to you. So here it is.
All
My
right.
number two. You can't have the Undertaker without Kane. And I posted this one because I know, Adam, you're talking about you watched him more like in the late '90s and stuff. I didn't start watching Kane. I saw him, around '99, 2000, and he still was full mass then. But I really remember, the night Triple H, him and Triple H one-on-one for the world title. If he won, he got the title. Obviously, if he lost, he had to unmask in Madison Square Garden, and it was in June of 2003. So I know a lot
What
of.
a memory.
Yeah, I actually remember I taped this match and went off to basketball camp at Catawba because I did that two summers. And I remember they were going to have this match, and I just remember thinking all week I was thinking about it. And I can't. As soon as I got home, that's the first thing I watched. So I can remember it like yesterday, sitting in the living room on the floor and watching the show, and him unmasking. And I just remember after that, like he was just like a terror. He pile drived Linda McMahon. And then that's when he had the Shane rivalry. Not too long after that, I think he had a rivalry with RVD, and it was it was really really creepy, just like it was with him having the mask on. Like he lost it basically. And he'd come to ring with a towel on, and he just played the part so well. And I can just remember it so vividly. But yeah, the Kane definitely has to be. You were right. He is my number two, and he possibly definitely could have been my number one. But he very creepy, and he was creepy with the mask and without the mask. Did you remember? Do you remember much with after he masked? Like, do you remember a lot of that?
I remember, like you said, like I vividly remember Triple H and Kane, like that match happening. And I, interestingly enough, remember being like kind of like, okay, this is cool. But then after a while, like kind of, I don't want to say disappointed. I feel like that's too strong of a word, but it was sort of a letdown in that, because the whole way through they were talking about how he was burned,
Yeah,
by a fire, and that's why he was so mad at Taker, because Taker like lit their house on fire, if I remember correctly, and
yeah.
Kane was burned by it and all this stuff. And
Right,
so
right. Yep, yep.
when the whole demasking thing was happening, I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I'm like, well, kind of cool, but I don't know, like to me, like it's cool that when he was demasked, and then I'm like, it's kind of like that, it's like there was a bit of regret, like, oh, I kind of wish they left a mysteriousness to it and left a mask on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that part. It was like at first when this picture here that you're seeing, I
Oh yeah.
thought at first like, oh, his face is burnt, but obviously it was just makeup, um and it wasn't burnt.
But I will give them credit though, because if you look at the hair, like the hair does look singed. Like it looks like they took a little bit a lighter to some of his hair and just kind
Yeah,
of lightly singed it.
it does.
Just how it kind of looks, and it's on everybody's screen, full screen. But I, it's interesting. I'm not surprised, but I am surprised that that's your number two. Um, because I mean, again, I knew you have this affinity for Kane, and kind of he has like a little special place right there in your Boston Celtics loving heart. But right next to Miami. But I'm a little bit surprised that you put him above the Undertaker, because I feel like as much as you love Kane, and we all love Kane, as Darlene likes to say, Kane is cute. Um, but I feel like the Undertaker has had so much impact, and I feel like his character in of itself, like we talked about, has been such an impact and has such a career, has done so much, has put on so many great matches. Not that Kane hasn't, but I feel like Taker has been a
Oh yeah.
constant throughout our whole wrestling lives. So I'm just a little surprised that Kane just edged the Undertaker out on that one.
Yeah, yeah, I was back and forth. I think for me, what did it, like I said, was that run after he, unmasked, and when he set Jr. on fire, and he was
Yeah,
when he electrocuted Shane's testicles there on Raw. So I mean, yeah, he just did all kinds of things, and like I remember when he set Jr. on fire, like I thought at first, like being, I mean, I knew it wasn't like a real, but I was just like, oh gosh, it was just kind of creepy, and like he just, to me, he was just a little more creepy in that aspect, like more maybe like mentally more than the Undertaker,
yeah.
to me. But it's really close.
Well, the Undertaker's a dead man,
He is.
so I mean, Kane. What did they call him? What did they call Kane? Wasn't there like the devil's
That
something, or
was
the yeah. So, you know, I don't know, but it's funny because like, and I'm just gonna go skip to my number two because we've talked about him, the
yeah.
Undertaker.
Wow.
My number two is Undertaker. I don't think, honestly, the Undertaker could have been my number one, but I just, and I'll explain why he's not in a little while. But we've already talked about the Undertaker, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But yeah, I just feel like overall, the Undertaker has such an impact on, kind of like what any wrestler, regardless of what your persona is, like what you should model yourself after. Undertaker was always changing, even though he was still the Undertaker. He was different versions of himself, and he kind of changed with the times. And one great thing, until recently, like it would have been so easy for him to get on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and completely ruin the character, but
Yeah.
he didn't. And until recently, he didn't come out, like have interviews and do all
Yeah.
that stuff. And so there was such secrecy there. And
Right.
Kane is mayor. So I feel like, there's kind of that. But like, no, I just feel like The Undertaker is probably one of the best characters of our time, I feel like.
Yeah.
And like, and wrestling, like again, I just remember, like, maybe you echo me on this, but SmackDown for me, like, because I loved Raw, which I'm not sure why SmackDown is resonating with me lately, but I remember SmackDown being Batista, Eddie Guerrero, The Undertaker,
Kurt Angle,
um, Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar.
Rikishi.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I just kind of remember those days, and like it just sticks out to me so much. And so, I think the Undertaker's just kind of always just been there, and like you know, just especially the lightning and stuff. As a kid, that always got
Yeah.
me. The lightning and thunder and lightning always got me. I
And
just
Spain
loved that so much.
was the and the fire.
Yeah, the fire, which was
That
so
was good.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was cool too. But like I just loved the lightning. Like I always thought that's so
that
cool.
is cool.
So is it time for my number one?
It is. It is. Yeah. And well, I was going to say something back to Kane real quick before you head to your number one. What was cool about that too? Back when the internet wasn't obviously as relevant as it is now. I don't know about you, but I didn't know obviously what Kane looked like. I mean, I didn't even
Yeah,
know the internet until 2004. It was after the unmasked. I know people had it, but we didn't. So I
yeah,
had no idea what he looked like, and that was what added to it. Like I feel like now, if they did that, like let's say they did that with Bray Wyatt, and we didn't know what he looked like, you could just go look him up and you know
boom. Yeah,
see. But like with Kane, you couldn't see that, so that added to that kind of mystery and just wondering like, what does he look like? Is he really burnt? And I will admit it was a letdown when he wasn't really burnt. It was more a psychological thing, and that was
yeah,
more. I mean, that's what I was meant to say earlier. He's more maybe psychological than the Undertaker in some ways,
yeah.
like that. but yeah, I just wanted to point that out about the big red machine, Kane. So that
And I think I kind of like that because, like as we've gotten older, like the less stuff, scary stuff scares you, but the more the psychological stuff gets to you. You and I were talking about horror movies earlier, and we're talking about some of the demonic side of horror movies and how those to us are more creepier
yeah,
and than the Jason and Michael and somebody chasing you through
Scream,
the
yeah,
woods. Yeah, like those, like sure, serial killer is a little bit more serious, but and could happen, but
yeah,
the psychological side of it, it's just you don't know what's inside someone's head, and like I
yeah,
think that is, but yeah, so I agree. I think the psychological bit of it is especially now, and I think that's what the Fiend is exploring, and I'm excited to see more of that.
yeah.
Um,
All right,
before we
baby. Number one, baby.
before we get to number ones,
All right.
you mentioned honorable mentions earlier,
Okay.
so
Okay.
let's go ahead and do those before we hit our number ones.
Let's do that.
Why don't you go ahead and give me some of your honorable mentions?
Yeah, I'll list. So I've got four here. So
Wow.
one kind of the first one they tried to kind of do a different take on the Undertaker, and that is Mordecai.
Oh yeah.
He had a short stint. He wasn't with
Yeah.
WWE too long, but yeah, he went up against the Undertaker. He was kind of creepy, the Mordecai. It didn't obviously stick like the Undertaker, that the character, but that was creepy to me. Another one similar to Gangrel. It was WCW's version, I think. Vampiro. I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember the name. Yeah.
him and Sting, I believe, was a tag team at one point. But and Sting, you could technically maybe put in there as well. Got a little bit of mystique to him. And then I had Gangrel. I did have him. And then my last one, I wanted to remember what the saying was, but let's see if you can guess it. This person really liked feet. He was big into feet. You remember?
Is that Gene Snitsky?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of that psychological.
Yeah.
He had something with. Maybe that was Kane. Something with a. Maybe that was Kane with a baby. Him and Lita or something with an unborn baby and.
Yeah, but Gene Snitsky kicked it out into the crowd.
That's what it was. Yeah. He killed the baby supposedly. But right, yeah, and then
He booted it out into the crowd. Yeah.
rivalry. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a pretty good rivalry.
Yeah, it was something else. I'll tell you that.
That was a storyline. That was a good storyline.
But back to Mordecai for just a brief second. I remember being so excited about that debut because they built that up, and like I remember that, and I remember it kind of going nowhere, and I'm like, oh well, that's kind of sad. But yeah, I agree. And actually, I'm surprised. So, which kind of makes me wonder what your number one is. I have an idea because he wasn't on your honorable mentions. But let me go ahead and tell you my honorable mentions first.
Okay. All right.
So the Fiend hit my honorable mentions just because like, he's so young.
Yeah.
In this, so I kind of want to see more where it goes. And like you said, it's a little bit different, but it kind of does fit us in the terms of like the psychological bit of it, which is wrestling anyway. Like wrestling is psychological. Like that's the whole point of it.
Right.
But the other one that I could not go through this whole list without saying this guy, like again, this is a different type of creepy and scary in that you just don't know what this person is gonna like not necessarily do next, but like there's just like the boogeyman. Like, I could not like I just remember the boogeyman was a little bit like I was a little bit older at this point. I'm not sure when he debuted exactly, but I just remember the whole worm situation and then eating the what was it on Jillian Hall's face?
Oh yeah, like
And he just ate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just took it right off. And I just like it was a gross factor. It was more of a fear factor type thing.
Yeah.
Like it was very fear factor-esque in terms of the stuff he would put in his mouth. And so, but I want to go on to my number one. Do you have any guesses what my number one is?
It's not anything that I've said, and I don't know. I honestly don't.
You honestly don't know.
I don't have a guess for it. I mean,
so I'm going to be honest with you. I did not know about my number one until a
Oh,
couple of weeks ago.
oh, really?
Um, a couple of weeks ago, as for any of those of you who are following along with us on the 10 Count message group on Facebook Messenger, I recently just dove deep into Dark Side of the Ring.
Oh, okay, okay.
And there's an episode, there's so much fascinating stuff on there. If you haven't watched it, start binging it
I
now.
need to go watch that. I
Yeah,
need to
it's on Hulu
like what, 10
right now.
episodes or 12
Well,
or?
there's like 16. There's 10 on the second season, and I think 6 on the first one. And I think they're getting like 14 or 16 for season 3. They just
Yeah, I heard
announced
they're
that.
doing another one. Yeah,
And
I
so
need
they're
to.
doing a lot. And so I cannot recommend this more. Like, it is such a great look at wrestling, but and a real look. Like, it doesn't
Yeah,
sugarcoat stuff like, people want to do. Like, it just tells a real story, or what I feel, or what comes across as a real story.
yeah.
But I didn't know this person. Like, maybe I've heard of them, but I didn't know much about them until I watched the documentary that was on them for Dark Side of the Ring. My number one creepiest, scariest, and honestly frightful people in general in life is a guy named New Jack. I don't know if you've heard of him, Bryan. New Jack. Have you heard of him?
Is he in
He used he no 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 no
Oh, I'm thinking
no
somebody else.
no. He was in ECW back in the day.
Oh, okay. I may have
He's,
heard of him. I don't know much
he
about
he started out in Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
him. Okay.
And he then went on to ECW with Paul. And I don't want to give too much away. I, again, can't stress this enough to watch this episode. This is one thing that where, like, back in the day, people, like wrestlers, took wrestling so seriously. And this is a case of someone who not only took wrestling so seriously, but also took their self and character so seriously that they lived and breathed that character. Um, there's a few situations where this guy was just so violent. Like, obviously CCW, so they're cutting themselves, they're hitting themselves and each other with all kinds of random stuff and bleeding every night. Yeah. But there's supposed to be a tag match, and a guy couldn't make it, and so this 17-year-old kid, I think he was 17, called himself Mass Transit. He was a big kid. He was 17, but he told Paulie and all them he was like 21 or something, so he was of legal age to wrestle. And he comes up to New Jack and asks New Jack to cut him, blade him, so he will bleed, because he thought it'd be so cool if he bled. And New Jack just felt the gall of this kid to ask to be bladed and to bleed, and like, just, the balls he had. So not only does he cut him, but he cuts him so bad and he beats him so bad that he gets 50 stitches.
Oh my
And
God.
they literally have to take him to the hospital and he just kept beating him down. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. He also stabbed a guy between 9 and 16 times in a wrestling match years later. He would hold grudges against other wrestlers and pay them back for stuff that they did to him in the ring.
Wow.
Later on. And just watch the documentary. To me, that's when you take wrestling so seriously that because the whole point of wrestling is, you want to put on a good show. You want it to look real, like you're really fighting, but you also want to take care of that other person.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy seems to not care about not only himself, but other people around him. And just the sheer audacity and just how much he got a kick out of himself and the shit he did. Because they interview him on Dark Side of the Ring, and he is just loving it. And to me, that is the scariest type of person. I don't see how anyone would want to get in the ring with him and be comfortable getting in the ring with him.
Wow, so he's still that way today. Then I thought maybe he'd gotten a little better now.
I think he maybe learned some things, but yeah, I still feel like he is in the court. What I saw in the interview, it felt like he's still in that state of mind where you cross him, he has the right to get back at you any way he can. If you guys if you were wrestling, he'd make you get hurt, seriously hurt. So that's my number one. Now I know I kind of took that because to me, the scariest and even the best wrestling is like when someone is in that ring and they say words that are or feel real. Like we talk about this all the time, Brian. Edge and Matt Hardy, when they had that match and over Lita and like a real life situation happened and they turned that around and used it in the ring, like it felt real, it felt raw, it felt emotional. And when you have someone like New Jack who does stuff like this, who, yeah, the 17-year-old kid was like, maybe he did step out of bounds and break the code of what professional wrestlers are, but he's young. He hadn't been taught that.
Yeah.
And it's up to you to teach that, not to put them in physical harm.
Yeah.
You know, and so I find that type of recklessness and carelessness, and just the audacity of that probably the scariest of all. And so that's kind of why I went with him as number one.
Okay. So did you have a picture of him? And also, yeah, come on. Is he still wrestling?
I don't think he's wrestling anymore. Because I think he like his last, like one of the last times he did wrestle was that stabbing incident. But here's New Jack. This is actually from the documentary Dark Side of the Ring.
Okay.
And so like you can look at his forehead, like that's from years of abuse. And you know, and he talks about how bad his childhood is, which again, or was, like, I get that, like, I understand, but that's still like, you have to, you know, there's just no excuse to treat someone the way that he treated several people, it sounds like, and like it just blew my mind. I can't recommend the documentary, the show itself, but particularly this episode enough.
Yeah, I have to watch that. I've heard, you know, from you and the 10 count group that it's really powerful and really interesting. A different take of
yeah.
So yeah, I have to watch that. But yeah, I would not have guessed that in a million years. I think I have heard of him now that you say it, but I didn't know the story, you know, none of that. So that's very informative. So definitely learned something myself tonight. But yeah, let's go to my number one here on my list. Who do you think it is? Who do you think it is, Dr. Davis? Number one.
Is it the Boogeyman?
We will see. See, maybe possibly him.
That's my guess. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
All right. Let's unveil my. I like this. I like this format. How we're doing. I like this. We'll have to do this more on the show here. Let us know what you think. All right. Number one. Scariest / creepiest, in my opinion, of all time. You are right. It is. I'm the boogeyman. I'm coming to get you, as he would say. You know, I don't know if I would say that he would be like the scariest, but creepiest, yes. I mean, eating the worms and just the way he was, and like I said, eating. I forgot that he ate that, whatever it was on. You said, was it Lillian or Jillian?
Jillian Hall, yeah.
Yeah, Jillian Hall, yeah. Eating that off her face, and it was just, and then, like I said, the worms and whatever else he ate. And he definitely is 100% the creepiest, if not, maybe not the scariest, but certainly the creepiest in my opinion, that there ever was. I don't know. I don't think he had a long reign in WWE. I don't think. But it was long enough.
Yeah, and I mean, he still hangs out, and I think they even did a little show with him on the WWE Network.
Yeah, and he makes appearances still every now and then. I know he obviously doesn't. I think he may have been in like a Royal Rumble or some sort of match.
That seems right. Yeah,
last couple years. Yeah. So, but yeah, he is very creepy, if nothing else. Just, I mean, the way he dresses and then eating the worms and having the worms just come out of his mouth.
And they're still crawling and like the claws. Like, even something.
Worms. I think we all maybe. I know I did as a kid. Ate a couple worms, but nothing like that.
Yeah.
That's it's intense. So yeah, he definitely is my number one of creepiest of all time.
Well, you know, and again, like I've even thinking about the clock and just how unsettling him having the clock was, and like you're right, like he was pretty creepy, and you know, it kind of felt like a flashback to like the 90s kind of wrestling, like just maybe 80s as well, like just but yeah, you're right. Like again, I wouldn't put him as high as you did, but I definitely see where he was creepy, especially the Jillian Hall thing, man. That was I remember that vividly remember that happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder what that was that was on
I'm
her.
sure it's like some prosthetic type thing that, because it just came right off. But you remember, like, it was
Oh,
on her face for the
yeah.
longest time, and
Yeah. Yeah.
because he just took it and it just came right off. But like, I remember going, oh, like, I just
Yeah.
remember going, oh,
Yeah.
when that happened. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, I like it when characters like these that we mentioned tonight come along because they're kind of like a breath of fresh air. Because like obviously wrestling as a whole, you have to suspend a little bit of disbelief. But I feel like when wrestlers like Kane, The Undertaker, The Boogeyman, Gangrel, like they come along, you kind of have to dig a little bit deeper, pun intended for The Undertaker, and kind of like suspend a little bit more disbelief because obviously it's not a dead man. But like with movies, and that's kind of like that entertainment factor. Like with movies and TV, like you kind of just go along for the last ride, if you will. This is just a segment of puns. And kind of you look for that boogeyman, and it's just it feels a little fiendish. But nothing. You just letting this
You're
go. You're
taking it
not.
a little too far now.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just enjoying.
I don't want to speak for the whole mankind, um, but it's just I'm ready for a new Jack to come along and kind of. Okay, I'm done. I'm done. But no, like I do like characters like the Fiend, like because they did the thing with Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt family, like that had glimpses of something cool, and then it just fizzled out, and like it went nowhere. But I feel like Bray Wyatt and the Fiend has kind of resurrected that and has become our new Undertaker Mankind type character. Not necessarily exact as them, but kind of in that same vein, and kind of again brings this ridiculous realism, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you 100% there. And then I like those puns there that dished out. But everybody, let us know. Again in the comments, what's your scariest wrestlers?
Because I know we've missed people. I know. Sorry, I didn't mean to run over you, but I know we miss people, and I know we've met, especially like people kind of before Bryan and I's time. Like I know some of you have been watching for a long time, and remember some. So tell us, who do we need to check out? Who do we need to go on the network, or YouTube and look up?
Yeah, I saw like some names like the Taskmaster. I don't know if you heard of him. Kevin Coleman, and then Abdul the Butcher. Those
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
were on there as well. So yeah, let us know what you think. Real quick, let's talk about before we go off the scariest match types. You want to list? I have several that I have, and we don't have to talk about all of them in depth. I did want to show one and see if you've heard of it, and I'll do that in a minute. But I'll let you kind of start there. Scariest match types of all time.
Scariest match type. To me, honestly, I think one of mine would be. This is gonna sound like ridiculous, but like anytime there's any height involved, like to me that's one of my worst fears is the height. So like anytime you do anything, particularly the ladder matches, some of those ladders,
Yeah.
and like I think there's been scaffolding matches and stuff like that. I haven't seen that many of those, so I can't speak to those. But like just in terms of just like the ladder matches, always um, kind of creep me out, as well as like the strap matches, like when you're strapped together.
Mm,
To me like putting myself in a wrestler's shoes, and maybe I'm taking this in a different way than you were thinking, Bryan, but like to me being strapped to another wrestler, even though like obviously we're working together,
yeah.
but like having that hindrance of not being able to use that arm as freely as the other one,
Right.
that to me that's like thinking of being in a tight space and claustrophobic and not being able to move as much. Like that's kind of like that kind of thing.
Okay, okay. Yeah, this is a guy that by the way, for you, those of you who do not know, when he's every night he puts the sheets. He doesn't have the sheets touching the bed, he has to have it out. So that's
Yeah,
fun
yeah.
about Mr. Davis, Dr.
Yeah,
Davis.
my feet have to be out. I can't have it. I mean, not that I'm scared of like, confined spaces. Like I'm not a big fan of them, don't get me wrong, but I like my feet out and I don't like to be restricted. If I start to feel restricted, I don't like it. It's like heights. I don't like it. I don't like it.
Don't put Davis in a casket. We better not have a casket match.
No, actually, hang on. We've been in casket. You remember that? We were in caskets. You remember that?
Oh, that's right. At the haunted. I almost forgot about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Wasn't that for like was that a minute or two or?
Yeah, something like that. They
I
put you in
think
the
it like
casket.
shook or did. Yeah,
Yeah.
I forgot about that, dude.
Yeah, there was a
Right.
camera in there, so like everybody else, like Aaron, you, I think Corey was there as well.
Corey was, yeah.
Yeah, and we would watch each other in the casket and just see
That's
how
right.
they panicked. Yeah.
Where was that? Which place was that? It wasn't the one because I think me, you, and Corey went to the one and
was that the one that was shut down that was like not too far from Ashboro? That wasn't it because Aaron was with us and something like that. Did they have that? Was that them?
You might be right because
I remember Aaron was with us. Yeah, and he didn't always go to like unless I don't think it was like Spooky Woods of Terror. I don't think it was either one of them, and I'm not sure if he's really been to too many other than those with us.
Yeah, he didn't go to the one where you had to pay, like we had to go early that day. That was Boogie Woods, or I think.
Yeah, it was right outside Concord in Charlotte. Yeah. That's Boogie Woods. Yeah,
but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, mine real quick. The scariest match types. I mean, you got to go with the Inferno match. That one that would be creepy. Being in the ring and the fans say like you can feel the fire, like it's no joke. It's not some sort of imagination, like it's the real deal. And then sometimes like Kane one time got his arm. I mean obviously protection, but still that's crazy. And to have a match with that type of atmosphere is just insane to me. So that one's definitely creepy. The House of Horrors match they did was interesting, which I think they're doing something tonight on NXT Halloween Havoc on USA. So I'll be interested.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't usually hadn't been watching NXT, but I'm probably going to tune in tonight, or tomorrow from tonight's episode to watch Halloween Havoc. That's pretty cool. Also, the Buried Alive match. I mean, that one's always. I've always wondered how did they get away, but I guess it's before. But I've always wondered. I know there's obviously a trap door there. A couple more. The barbed wire match. That one is intense.
Like the ropes.
Yeah, having the ropes as barbed wire. I don't know if they've done them in WWE. I think they have a long time ago. I know ECW did it. The First Blood match is always grueling, very grotesque, to say the least. And then this one, the last one I want to show you. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, so I want to show everybody. I don't know if I've seen many of these matches either, but I had to share. I want to share this because I was like, wow, that would be scary, especially if you're Adam Davis here. This would be pretty scary. And I think you might know where I'm going, and that is the scaffold match here. That is pretty high. And I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much like to stand on, and I mean, I don't know. They're not strapped in as far as I'm aware. I don't believe.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Like either way, like that's just a no for me, dog. That's and no, I no.
Yeah, that's at least like 20 feet. I mean, need to get Shane McMahon to jump off of that thing.
I'm sure he gladly would.
Probably, yeah. But I saw that and I definitely thought about you. And I mean, that'd be scary for anybody, probably. But yeah, that's like, how do you like? I want to go back and watch that now. It's like, how do you fight on top of that? Because I mean, maybe 4 foot of width. It doesn't. I mean, it looks like only 4 or 5 foot of width. So, like, what do you do? Like, do you pin somebody? How do you win that match? I don't know. I'm curious, intrigued to go back and look at that.
Yeah, I think maybe that's one of our future shows is we watch some matches and we talk about like some of our favorite specialty or like matches that matches that rarely happened. Yeah, so maybe that's something we do in the future. But again, if you've got any match types that you find creepy, scary, or just makes you uncomfortable, Put them in the comments below.
Yep.
We might talk about them next time on the next episode of the Shakedown, which will be episode 6. And also same for wrestlers. If there's any wrestlers, which I know we've missed plenty,
Oh, yeah.
that you would put on your top 5, let us know. Put them in the comments or hit us up on the 10 Count message app on the Facebook Messenger. And we look forward to talking about those next time. Bryan, do you remember what your little...
Yeah, I do. Before we get to that, we usually do a food for thought question. Tonight, I don't know. I hadn't really planned of anything. I mean, I guess what we can do this time is just think about the scariest wrestlers, match types, and just we won't talk about it next show since we talked about it tonight. But just post that in on here. The 10 Count discusses, and we can definitely talk about that. So post that. We will have a question next episode for the December episode. So a food for thought. We will have that then. But for now, yeah, just again tell us scariest match type, scariest wrestlers. And that will be great. But yeah, it's been fun tonight and hopefully a little spooky tonight talking about the scariest wrestlers and match types. Hope everybody has a safe and happy Halloween and watch plenty of scary movies. I know I'm going to try to watch a few. And yeah, maybe that's something we can talk about, some scary movies sometime as well. But yeah, hope everybody has a very happy Halloween. He's Adam. I'm Bryan. And that was the start of something